at the end of the day, you do have to do these activities, but you have to be focused on what your goals are, what it is that you ultimately want to be doing in terms of production, and just be focused that eventually you will get there, but it's going to take time.
Hello, agentpreneurs, and welcome back to the Daily List Report. As you saw, we've got a regular and one of my all-time favorite guests, Loida Velasquez from Team BC at EXP, back on the show today. Today, we're talking all about common mistakes of a new agent. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of great content that we're going to talk about there. Before we do that, a couple things I want to point out. The first one is YouTube. Loida has an amazing channel. She's been making a ton of new content. And you'll get a lot of ideas here, a lot of new content about new construction and stuff that's going on in the downtown LA area. Definitely give her a subscribe. I can't even say the word there. Also on Instagram, Loida Velasquez, you can follow her here. She's got great content. And lastly, she's got this new agent boot camp. And I see her posting stuff on this all the time. And I see all of these agents and they're just like, oh my gosh, I learned so much. Definitely check out her boot camp. It's really great content and you can learn directly from Loida right there. Of course, while you're here, please consider subscribing to this channel and click that little bell so you're notified of all future episodes. All right, now that all the formalities are out of the way, let's bring Loida back on the show. Loida, welcome back to the Daily List Report.
Yes, thanks, Randy. It's always fun having these conversations with you about real estate.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoy them too, and I appreciate you taking so much time out of your busy schedule to do this. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to all of our agentpreneurs. So thank you, Loida.
Yes.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the most common mistakes of new agents. And I know that this is something that you're passionate about because you built a boot camp around it, right? So I know that one of your areas of emphasis and focus is really helping new agents get started in the right way, kick their careers off. It's such an amazing business, isn't it, Loida? You can live really any life you want to in this, but getting started right, I think, is key.
Yes, definitely. If you don't have the right mindset or the right people around you or the right training, it can go from you being successful to you giving up after like a few weeks.
Absolutely. And a lot of agents do give up because I think they don't take the advice and they don't study, they don't listen, and maybe they think it's easy, and it takes a lot of work. So, let's start sort of high level, right? As you're coaching new agents, what do you think are some of the most important things that a new agent needs to start with?
Well, first, they definitely have to have some type of structure. So whether someone just got their license, you have to know exactly what your schedule is going to look like. Everyone's schedule is different. Some people have kids, some people have a part-time job or a full-time job. So you just have to be very structured and know that whatever time you are allocating to real estate activities, you're going to fully focus on that. And whether it's prospecting, whether it's you working on your database, whatever it is, just know that you have to be very focused on that. And it's going to take time for you to build something long-term and eventually start getting business. But I think that's definitely the starting point.
Let me ask you a question about that, Loida. So, I'm a technology guy. I'm a startup guy. That's what I do. And I oftentimes talk to entrepreneurs and they're like, hey, I've got this idea. I want to build this business. And they have a full-time job. And I struggle with giving them advice, right? Because I know what it takes to be a successful tech entrepreneur. And it takes everything you've got and then some, right? So that's the first thing I say to them is I said, gosh, at some point you need the gut check and you kind of have to go all in. Yeah. What do you say to a real estate agent? Because this is a career you can do part-time, right? But it depends on what you want. What's your advice to an agent who's struggling with that decision?
Yeah, well, pretty much at the end of the day, they're going to have to make a decision. This is a business that is very time consuming. It takes up a lot of hours. If someone does have a full-time job that's from 9 to 5, really in the afternoon from 5 to 8, are you going to be spending that time prospecting or generating leads? It's going to come down to them and their schedule, but weekends, any time that they're not at their full-time job would have to be spent on real estate. And it'll get to a point that it's just overwhelming and a decision will need to be made, whether you want to continue your full-time job or whether you want to transition and now do real estate. But it's going to be one or the other if you really ultimately want to be successful in real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. There's something that you talk about, and it's tunnel vision, right? So, what does that mean? What does it mean for you to have tunnel vision focus?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I see a lot of newer agents do is that they start comparing themselves to other agents that perhaps have been in the business maybe for a year or two or are already doing deals. Or maybe they're comparing themselves to top producers thinking, oh, well, I'm going to do everything that Loida did. She says cold calling works. I'm going to cold call. But they only cold call for like a week or two and then they think it doesn't work, or they go and knock on doors and oh, that door knocking is not for me, cold calling is not for me, I'm terrified of the phones. And at the end of the day, you do have to do these activities, but you have to be focused on what your goals are, what it is that you ultimately want to be doing in terms of production, and just be focused that eventually you will get there, but it's going to take time. We all progress at different speeds. Everyone has different skill levels. Their communication, the way that they learn, the way that they communicate is all different. So at the end of the day, you can't be focused on me or another agent. You have to focus on yourself and know what your end goal is looking like.
That makes sense, Lloyd, and it's really difficult, right? Because I've had the blessing of being able to talk to lots of top agents like yourselves, and I talk to some agents like, "Oh, I did 40 deals in my first year," right? That can be really discouraging because they're an outlier. Almost nobody does
Yeah.
that kind of business, and so you really can't compare yourself to what other people are doing. But you said something else that I think is important, which is understanding what your goals are, and beneath that, I think what your why is. I recently interviewed Mike Sherrard. I don't know if you know him. He's up in Canada and he makes a lot of really good content. And his dream, I'm sure you saw this, is to have a purple Lamborghini. That was his dream. And he finally realized that dream and he just took delivery of a beautiful purple Lamborghini, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't about the car, right? But that goal, that anchor that he had, he would go to Lamborghini dealers every month just to look at them, right? Like he was obsessed with this, but it really drove him to success. So, how do you think about goals? How do you think about your why, right, for a new agent? How do they find that?
Yeah. So it's funny because when I first got into real estate, I remember I did a lot of training at the brokerage that I was at. And one of the assignments that we did on one of those days is that we had to do kind of like a journal entry, but writing it in the future as if it was the end of, so this was back in 2016. Write it as if it was today, December 31st, 2019. What does your life look like? And
Right.
I remember writing everything down, how many deals I was doing, where I lived, what car I drove. And as I was writing this, I was kind of smiling and laughing because I'm like, this is so crazy. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to get this,
Right.
and I have it still written. And looking back now, I accomplished so many of those things that I wrote down. So sometimes maybe when you're writing down goals, they might feel scary or they might feel like it's unrealistic, but nothing's unrealistic. If you write it down, now it's kind of like, let's push forward and let's try to accomplish these goals. And that's kind of the way that I do it. If it makes me scared or if it makes me nervous, like, oh my gosh, is this even attainable? It makes me want to go even like push further to try and get that.
I think it makes a lot of sense, Loida. And, for those listening right now who, like, that doesn't resonate with you, I'm like that as well, right? I'm not somebody who ever sat down and wrote New Year's resolutions or wrote a letter to myself, in the future, right? I never did that. I was never oriented that way. And maybe that's because I'm self motivated, whatever. But I will tell all of you watching right now that the vast majority of the top agents that I speak to, that like Loida have achieved a life that probably many of them never imagined they would have. This was a part of that process, and it is a powerful motivator reminder, and it creates that vision for the future. Is that how you think about it, Loida?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it was for me.
It's pretty incredible. Okay, so one of the things that I know that agents struggle with constantly is rejection, right? So, like you said, you make 2 weeks of cold calls and you get hung up on 99% of the time, or you're door knocking and they're looking through the people and they're there, but they're not opening the door. Tons of
Yeah.
rejection. How do you advise an agent to stay positive in the face of all of this rejection?
Well, you have to remember to not take things personal because at the end of the day, there will be someone that needs our help. If someone is mad or if they give you attitude, it's not to you personally. They just maybe don't like people or they don't want to talk to anyone. So having thick skin is also very important. One thing that helped me is just being very confident in what it was that my scripts were, or just anything real estate related. I made sure to always study and do objection handlers. And I always made sure to know how to respond to the most common and frequently asked questions, whether it was at the phones or at the door. So that's what has helped me. But yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, mindset is key. Even recently, I was talking to a new agent and she was telling me, you know what, I'm terrified of cold calling, but I know that I have to do it. And yeah, cold calling is scary because we're probably going to get rejected or get yelled at. But at the end of the day, the way that I see it is if I mess up or if they yell at me, I'm never going to see them ever again in my life. They don't know what I look like. So let's just move on to the next person, because eventually I'll get to that person that does need my help. And I want to be there to make the deal happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's something about this industry that I think I didn't appreciate prior to starting this company. And that is really the importance and the role of a coach, right? Because what I think probably happens to a lot of people is you either go out too soon, right? So you didn't do all of the prep and the objection handling and all of that, and you get the door slammed in your face, so to speak, right? Or literally, and you get discouraged. But then I think there's another group of agents who keep saying to themselves, I'm not ready yet. Just a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more training, just a little bit more practice, just a couple more, objection handling training scenarios, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll be ready. And I feel like, and this isn't a pitch for you, this is just authentic, right? I feel like that's where a coach can really step in and keep you accountable.
Yeah, I think exactly what you just mentioned is what stops a lot of agents from actually picking up the phones and start talking to strangers, because they think, you know what, I need to know every single page of the contract before I even start working with the buyer. Or what if they ask me this and I don't know what to say? Until you're actually out in the field doing these things and be put in uncomfortable situations where you have to figure things out, that's how you're going to learn. And when you do mess up, I mean, we all mess up. I didn't start off being great. I mean, we all
Yeah,
start off learning, messing up, then taking whatever we need to do to make different onto the next one. So yeah, that's definitely something that I see a lot of people struggling with, but it's normal and you just gotta do it and get better that way.
absolutely. And the reality is it takes time and it takes practice. And I
Mhm.
think that's the thing. When we talk about sort of the myths of real estate, right? Going in, right, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you're like, this business is easy, I can make big commissions, how hard could it be? And the reality is, like, we talked about this, Loida, with like YouTube content, for example.
Mhm.
It's going
Yeah.
to take a while. You may never break out, right? But it's going to take time. You've been doing this for years, right? And so you have to build that library. You have to build that momentum, that awareness. The same thing is true as you build your sphere, right? It takes time to build that. So
Yeah.
do you set an expectation with a new agent, which is like, hey, you got to give this 2 years of hard work or a year or 10 years? Like, what do you say to an agent in terms of mentally preparing them for this business?
Yeah, what I tell them is that obviously the more people that you talk to, the higher chances that you'll come across someone that's looking to buy or sell. So in the beginning, you have to make at least between 30 and 40 contacts in terms of having conversations. It's all about having conversations. The more conversations you have every single day, the sooner you'll get to that first deal. If you're not really talking to anyone, it's just going to take much longer. But sometimes that's the thing that a lot of agents don't want to do. They don't want to pick up the phone, or they only want to talk to five people when it takes a lot more than that.
Absolutely. Yep. No, it makes sense. And at the end of the day, right, this is marketing. One piece of this business is marketing. There are contracts and law and customer service and
Yeah.
all of that, right? But, really, I think the biggest challenge that people have is marketing. And what I want everybody to understand is that marketing is a numbers game, right? Every competent marketing person you talk to, there's a funnel, right? And in order to spit someone out the bottom who's a buyer or a seller, there's a lot of people ahead of that or behind that, so to speak, that said no to you, that ignored you, that weren't ready, they're not in market yet, and all of that, right? So you really have to think about it as a numbers game.
Yeah, exactly.
Loida, we'll wrap up this episode with this, right? So, if you were to go back to, new agent Loida, right, with everything that you know now, is there sort of, what is something that stands out as the one thing that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Something that I wish I knew way in the beginning was that I just had to stay focused and know that even though maybe I wasn't getting deals or converting people and it was taking months, eventually it was going to happen. Because this is something that happened to me, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people go through this. I remember it was around the 6 month mark that I was starting to get very discouraged. I was making phone calls, talking to expireds, talking to for sale by owners. I was door knocking every single day, and I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And then that's when you kind of start questioning yourself, like, is this even really for me? Maybe I suck. Maybe I'm not a good real estate agent.
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing this? But then what changed it for me was a mindset shift. And instead of focusing on the negative, I needed to focus on all the progress that I had made. At that 6 month mark, I now knew all of my scripts. I now knew a lot of my objection handlers. So I needed to focus on all the progress that I had made. And it was when I saw the perspective that way that, like, 2 3 weeks later is when I got my first big listing from someone that I cold call. And then it just started to snowball after that. So that is something that I would definitely encourage everyone to keep in consideration, especially when you're new. Just think of all of the progress that you have made and not so much focus on maybe why it's taking so long.
I think that's great advice, Loida. And I think, joining the right company, which we didn't talk about today, but I think that's important. Finding the right peer group, I think that's important. Finding a coach, I think that's important, right? Because this is such a hard job, you need that motivation. You need somebody to sort of remind you, like, and
Yeah.
reinforce and encourage you along the way. Loida, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about really some of the challenges and opportunities that new agents face.
Yes, thank you, Randy.
All right. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We've done a lot of episodes with Loida, really, really good stuff. All of those links are below. If you want to know how Loida, sort of a day in the life of Loida, we also have that episode, and she has one on her channel as well. So please definitely go over there and check out her content. It's incredible. And if you're looking for a coach, I think her program and her boot camp is incredible as well. So definitely check that out. Until tomorrow, be safe, be healthy, be happy. We'll talk to you soon.